Hey everyone, I'm here with Seattle-based Kendra Long, a leading personal injury attorney, and our special guest who helps injured women get justice when they've been hurt through no fault of their own. And today we're talking about how someone can find out if they have a personal injury case or not, and also what they can do about it if they have. Good to have you, Kendra.
Hi, thanks for having me.
With pleasure. Now, before we get started, if you have had an accident or you just need some questions answered right now, just go to injuredwomen.com and you'll get a free assessment, some immediate next steps, and above all, peace of mind. So to kick off, Kendra, let's just talk about how someone would know if they have a personal injury case or not. You were talking, for example, just having a car accident, obviously doesn't qualify.
Yeah, so having a car accident isn't enough. The damage to your vehicle does not always tell the story about whether someone is injured. Sometimes people can be in a really horrific collision and they walk away without a scratch. It's a miracle. And sometimes people get hit at pretty low speeds in a parking lot, for example, but they have significant injuries that need treatment for several months. So the damage alone on a vehicle does not determine whether or not someone has an accident.
Okay. So again, for our listeners, it's more about how you feel rather than how damaged the car is. Okay. Let's just be clear on that.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I think the number one question for me is, are you injured? Are you injured? Do you have an injury, whether that be a physical injury or an emotional injury? After this accident, have you suffered an injury?
All right, we'll come on to emotional injury in a bit. I wanted to talk to you about fault because we were talking about this and I think it's a key differentiator in a case. And just talk to our listeners about defining whose fault something is and how that works out in the case.
So I'll start out by saying that individuals should not assume fault in an accident. They don't know the law very clearly. They don't always know if they were at fault, if they were partially at fault, or they were completely fault-free in an accident. So it's really important to talk to an attorney about the unique circumstances of your case to determine whether or not you were at fault or whether you're fault-free or whether you're somewhere in the middle.
So if someone is, being shouted at, this guy's shouting at you and they're saying, well, you're so silly, it's your fault. Don't take any notice of that, right?
No, I mean, he's angry. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe he's trying to cover up his own accident because he did the wrong thing. The laws cover these types of situations. So if you've been in an accident, it's really important to talk to an attorney about your circumstances so that they can make a determination based on the law of whether you...
So I think the big takeaway, and I think this is something you mentioned to me as well, is never assume, right?
Never assume and talk to an attorney.
Yeah.
Just ask.
Actually, talking about injuries, I mean, defining what an injury is, let's just talk about that because a lot of people think unless their legs hanging off, they're not really injured.
Yeah. Sometimes injuries can be really significant. They require surgeries or worse. Other times injuries are more subtle. And I think that's a really important thing for people to know is that sometimes you have an accident and maybe you don't feel injured right away because all the adrenaline is coursing through your body and it's masking your pain. But after a few days, you notice, wow, like my neck hurts so bad, like my upper back hurts so bad. My knee hurts because a lot of people hit their knee on the dashboard. People are experiencing pain later. And so that's okay. You can still go get treatment for that. You are injured from that accident. And sometimes they're not always physical manifestations of injury. Sometimes they're emotional manifestations of injury. And that's also okay. That's still injury and it still matters. And it's a huge, huge part of it.
Let's talk about that a bit more because you were saying to me that women have a much higher rate of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder from accidents, and there's a big emotional impact on them. And women tend to sort of push it aside, don't they? They're working moms or whatever they're doing. And it's one of the big things you see getting swept under the carpet.
Yeah, it does because people tend to their physical injuries first because they're the most pressing, right? You try to put this excessive worry, this hyperventilation every time you get in the car, this extreme anxiety every time you think about driving. And I see it. I see it in a lot of women. It's very common in women after traumatic situations such as car accidents. Um, the and I see it a lot in mothers who were in accidents by themselves who now have significant fear of driving with their children because that's their life. They have to protect them. It's nature, right? And now they're like, oh my God, this terrible thing has happened to me. I don't know. What if it happens again? What if it happens when my kids are in the car? So they avoid driving at all costs. They avoid driving past the accident scene. And these things take a real toll on their lives. So I always say, like, if you're feeling like that, you need to mention it to somebody because
it's classed as an injury, right? It's classed as an injury, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
all right. Now, just moving away from that slightly and talking about insurance cover, just talk to our listeners about how that affects whether we've got a case or not. And yeah, just talk to our listeners about that.
Yeah. So in an accident, like a car accident, for example, the insurance company for the other party that hit you, or even your own insurance, will be the one that is paying the claim. Very few individuals have the assets or resources to pay a claim like this. That's why we all have insurance, okay? It's why it's required by law. So the first thing you need to know is, does this person have insurance? If they do, great. This is great. In Washington, the minimum policy is $25,000. So we know they have that if they do have valid insurance. And then the second layer of coverage is, do you have underinsured or uninsured motorists on your own auto insurance policy? This is an optional coverage that you can opt into. A lot of people do have it. Some people decline it. But if you have that, then your own insurance company, if they don't have enough insurance, if the other party does not have enough insurance to cover your injury, then your own insurance is going to step in to cover that gap. Really important in making you whole and making sure that you are compensated for the entire loss that you've suffered.
Okay. So again, on the point of don't assume that people have or don't have it, it's really just move forward and speak to an attorney about that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you can't assume that they have insurance or don't have insurance. Some people carry around fake insurance cards in case they get pulled over. Some people let their insurance lapse. And then sometimes they just don't have their insurance card on them at the time of the accident. So they're cited for no insurance by the police, but they do have insurance. It's just that they didn't have their card on them right then. So don't assume, reach out to an attorney, certainly ask. It's something that could be investigated and we find the coverages that's going to cover that loss for you.
All right. Amazing. And just to wrap up, you mentioned to me there is quite often this assumption that somebody's injury just isn't a big enough injury to bother about, right?
Yeah. Sometimes people come to me and they only have an ER visit after, and then they've gone to chiropractic care for 6 months. And they just think, well, and they just ask, like, is this big enough? Is this kind of like, will you take this case? You do not have to be in a catastrophic accident to have an attorney. You deserve justice. Even if you were in an accident and only have $10,000 in medical bills, you're not going to get $1 million settlement for it, but you deserve representation. And in fact, the smaller cases, I think that an attorney is more important because it's going to maximize your recovery even further for you. So
yeah, okay, awesome. Look, really powerful advice, Kendra. And if you're liking the advice today, anyone listening can go to injuredwomen.com. That's injuredwomen.com, and you'll get a free case assessment, and you'll be able to get a plan of action and some immediate next steps that will make you feel a whole lot better. Look, Kendra, I just want to say thanks for being on. It's a pleasure to have you, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Speak soon.
Yeah.